Welcome to our special live stream for business leaders to discuss a topic that I hope will provide some nuggets of wisdom on how we can not just survive, but hopefully thrive, even with a strong economic headwind ahead of us in 2023. Today, we will talk about real solutions to industry challenges that Australia and the rest of the world is facing due to the looming recession, and why customer lifetime value is more important than ever. I'm Pauline. I'm the founder of AFDigital, and I'm very excited to introduce to you our guests for today. Our guests, I have two. One of our esteemed partners, Katy Dale, the global head of automation from MuleSoft. Also joining me today is one of my favorite people who is 90% genius and awesome and 10% silly and annoying sometimes, the CEO of AFDigital, Robin Leonard. Please introduce yourselves and share a bit about how you both became the superstars that you are now.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. So my name is Katy. I've been at MuleSoft for a bit over 3 years now, and in my current role, I'm leading the partner enablement for one of our latest product suites, MuleSoft Automation. Prior to MuleSoft, I basically spent pretty much my whole career in the CRM space, first Siebel, then Salesforce, and predominantly in sort of application and solution architect roles. So really focusing on how to connect systems and bring data into the CRM.
Oh, you're a real live lady in tech. I love it. Robin, can you share a bit of background about you, please?
My background, I've been running the business with Pauline for 11 long years. Prior to that, my background was I worked for IBM as a management consultant and a business analyst project manager. A lot of my career has been in the CRM and BI space. So I'm very excited to talk today about customer lifetime value, and especially with the upcoming recession, there's a lot to talk about.
I think we all know that the media often paints a gloom and doom scenario. A lot of experts are saying that the historical data is not even a good indicator because of the unpredictable behavior and extreme volatility of the market. We are currently in a tech layoff season, and potentially, again, the media scaremongering what they're calling the tech wreck 2.0. But can you both weigh in on your assessment of how 2023 could look like for business leaders?
Look, I'd have to agree. Whatever comes next, if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that we can't really foresee what's going to happen. And what we've really seen is across all industries, customers have really been facing some really similar challenges recently, such as the labor shortages. Everyone, I'm sure, has been impacted by the supply chain disruption and the global inflation, which is hurting all of our hip pockets at the moment. And really, I think where previously customers were focused on and being able to emerge from the pandemic stronger, now and moving into next year, what we're really seeing is that whilst businesses are, of course, still focused on growth, there is just this increasing sense of urgency around being able to do this, but do this in an efficient, productive, and in a resilient way. What we're trying to say here is that digital transformation, first and foremost, is not going away. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. It's always a priority and still very much a priority, but it's becoming really much more important to be able to achieve growth in that efficient way. So moving into next year, it's really being able to focus on how you can do more with less and make the most out of what resources you already have.
I agree, Katy. I think it's been interesting for businesses because they've gone through such turmoil with COVID and what that's meant for the business. It's really forced all organizations to have to rethink their operations and how they go to market. And that's driven a lot of organizations to do things like make sure their websites are great and e-commerce and obvious things that companies should have been doing for a long time. They started doing during COVID. Now there's another big headwind, which is the recession, and it's quite different to COVID, and it's a similar problem, but it's a deeper problem, and companies need to consider differently. They've gone through COVID and there's been government support for keeping their staff employed. Now that cliff has kind of dropped away, and we're going into a recession, and no one's going to pay to keep employees there in a recession. So organizations either need to really focus on increasing their EBIT, their profitability, so that they can sustain a recession, or they need to reduce their fixed costs. So it's kind of, I see a really crucial time coming up. It's not just getting easier because COVID is over. It's actually, we're going into a similarly challenging time with potentially less government support.
Wow, I guess the best thing business leaders can do is prepare for the worst and hope for the best. What should companies be doing now to batten down the hatches, we should be asking ourselves these questions. How can companies achieve more with less?
Really thinking about your operational costs. All business owners have been very aware of their fixed labor cost, and we're seeing a lot of innovation in robotic process automation. And you would see this, like I've got a Din Tai Fung below me in my building, and they've got a robot waiter. They've got one robot waiter, but it's the start of a new generation. I think that robot waiter, I don't know what the cost is, but let's say it's $100,000 for that one cost. But that one robot waiter can do 3 shifts per day because it doesn't get tired. It doesn't have breaks. It's maybe not as efficient as a human is, but it can do maybe 60% of the work of a human, 3 shifts per day. Those kind of investments, we see a big capital investment into robotic technology that organizations can then see the benefits, and they can actually make more revenue by keeping the same amount of headcount in their human workforce. So that's really where I see there's a big future potentially in process automation.
Look, I would have to agree. I think that sentiment about reducing costs is just, it's like echoed by what we're seeing here at Salesforce. It was actually a recent survey done of over 600 CIOs and IT decision makers. And the key priorities that we're seeing from them today is, as you would expect, typically meeting customer expectations, improving hybrid work, adapting those operating models whilst being able to reduce costs. It's a key impact that is facing all of the decision makers. The other one, which I think is important to touch upon, is how you can continue to do those things, but also why you're doing it with data security in mind. I'm sure everyone heard about the Optus data breach. You can't forget that whilst you do need to reduce costs and improve productivity, you always have to keep that security top of mind. To batten down the hatches, there needs to be this continual focus on growth, but being able to do so efficiently and sustainably, but also being able to be more agile. So you have to be able to move quickly to go where the market is going. And that's something that is typically challenged a lot of organizations, is being able to sort of really quickly move with the times, but being able to do that safely. So keeping that data security in mind when you're trying to scale. And last, but by no means least, is the ability to keep focusing on innovation. So even though times are getting tougher, you have to continuously innovate and keep bringing new product services to market, but being able to do that much more quickly. And the way to do that is really by embedding it as part of a whole organizational capability. So I think typically innovation might have been the responsibility of one team or one individual, but it's how do you make that like a full organizational capability?
Doing more with less, with automation, focus on growth and innovation. How can companies use these strategies and the robots, obviously the robots, employing more robots, Robin. How can companies then focus on, with these strategies, increase of customer lifetime value? We have to admit that in a looming recession, we need to tighten the purses. We need to play it safe, right? How do you then increase the customer lifetime value, even if you're not looking into large investments or aggressive investments anymore?
If you think about what customer lifetime value is, there's multiple metrics that make up customer lifetime value. One of the big metrics is customer acquisition cost. And we all know anecdotally, it's something like 4 times as expensive to acquire a new customer than to retain a customer. If you think very simply about that, so your customer lifetime value is your amount that they'd spend over the lifetime. So if they are with you for 2.5 years and they spend, once per month over that period, and it's $10 per spend, then you can figure out the average customer lifetime value. But you take away the churn and you take away the customer acquisition cost and you take away the cost to service the customer as well. So by reducing cost through the acquisition and the retention experience of the customer, you're increasing the lifetime value, as well as if you just double down. And I think without, as you said, Pauline, without making big investments, what you really want to do is just put focus on your customers and making sure they're having a good time with you.
Times we're going through, it's more important than ever to be able to really personalize the experiences you're having with your customer. So being able to offer the right products at the right time is really going to be able to enhance the experience, well, not only the experience your customers having, but their propensity to purchase with you and increase that customer lifetime value. A key way of achieving that is really being able to make sure you have access to all of your customers' data. If you don't have access to all the data, then how can you, make the right decisions to be able to know how to segment them effectively, how to target them effectively, to really, I guess, again, make the best use of the data that you have and being able to leverage that to drive your customer lifetime value. And again, as we've already kind of touched upon, it's really important to be able to make sure all of those sort of processes processes and things that happen behind the scenes to drive that outcome is automated as much as possible, because that will help you reduce your costs. And as Robin said, reduce the costs to the customer acquisition and servicing costs, which ultimately is going to increase that customer lifetime value as well.
That's a great point that you made, Katy, because you can't really measure and track customer lifetime value until you've got that customer centricity. It's really the first step is like, I need to know all of my transactions, all of those purchases. I need that to be attached to a unique customer. A lot of companies are still in the position of not having a single view of their customer. We just want a single view of our customer. We just want to log in and be able to see who it is and what their transactions are. And if I've got that data in a CRM, I can actually measure the customer lifetime value for that customer. And I can start to predict, are they going to spend more, or do I need to nudge them along the path? And the more access to information, you reduce cost everywhere. Katy also mentioned the data breach risk of having to import and share data between systems and rekeying data. All of that stuff it's going to go away. It has to go away because it can't be allowed to occur anymore. Businesses can't allow their staff to be at risk of a breach. It's not good for their career, and it's not good for the customer or your business. So more and more, you're going to see that systems just have to be in sync with each other. And you do that through automation and integration.
Basically, we need to have that focus in terms of the single view of the customer, make the automations work harder. You talked about increasing customer lifetime value, but I want to focus more on how we can do more with less, right? Let's talk about cost reduction with automation. Let's start first with how do you reduce? Because again, it's going to be tough next year. We need to face that fact, right? So I want to grill you both on this topic. How do you reduce the cost for that customer acquisition with automation?
When you're talking about reducing customer acquisition costs, the first thing that comes to mind is really just being able to automate all of your front to back office sales processes. So the key goal here is being able to speed up the sales process so that you're giving the sales teams as much time as possible to be able to focus on selling. So taking away all of their mundane tasks, and also, giving them all the data they need to be able to make informed decisions in order to guide their conversations with their customers is going to ultimately help reduce that cost to acquire them. Also, more importantly, to be able to drive more business and acquire more customers.
If you think about a salesperson and the amount of deals they can do, they're often constrained by administration, having to send out emails and prepare quotes, and the quoting process is usually very difficult and time consuming. In our own business, we need multiple people involved in the quoting and approval process. The salespeople are actually limited in their capacity to sell. But if you can provide automation tools where it's a lot easier, they click a button and the quote gets generated and sent out in PDF to an email, and it's auto signed, those kind of things allow your salespeople to sell more capacity, more volume sales without having to hire more sales reps. And that's B2B. If you go to B2C, you really need to scale your acquisition onboarding process. And the only real way to do that is through systems and automation.
I just really want to call out that the aim of automation here is not to necessarily reduce the number of people that you have and lay off staff. It's being able to make the best use, like we were saying, of what you have and the staff that you have, and give them more time to do those value adding opportunities. So I think there is sometimes that misconception that if we're talking about automation, we're talking about making people redundant and reducing your employees. If anything, it's the opposite. It's being able to improve your employee satisfaction by taking away those mundane, horrible tasks and being able to add to the selling cycle or to creating that new innovation and bringing more products to market or whatever it might be.
What about reducing customer onboarding costs?
Look, I think this is really an easy one for everyone to kind of understand how automation can help simplify this. So if you think about a customer onboarding process, for example, for a bank, it might be automating a customer's home loan application or a new bank account request. From a government perspective, it could be onboarding a new healthcare provider. So any, type of customer you're thinking about onboarding, every step of that process can be automated. Every part of sending out an email or getting someone to email an attachment that you scrape and get the data out and put in a system, you can automate the whole process end to end. It can really be as simple as just even passing data from different systems. But where I guess you really see the benefit with some of the technologies we have available today is things that you might not have thought that you could automate. I know Robin did touch upon all the robots, and I think where they play a good role is those things you haven't been able to typically achieve. I know pretty much every bank has one of those legacy product system, green system things that previously you couldn't really do anything with. You had people manually entering data or even reading 500 PDFs in a day. Yeah, while those things can 100% be automated, you kind of need to think beyond the benefits of just taking away people's time from automating those processes. It's also, you have that benefit of reducing errors from manual data entry. So anything that a human, I guess, is doing, you're incurring that risk of something not being entered properly. You can, picture the flow and effects of that. Someone's got to go and find out there's an issue, update it. It could decrease customer satisfaction if something ultimately impacts the customer. So it's not so much, obviously it's important to reduce the customer onboarding costs, but there's also sort of flow on effects of automation that have kind of hidden benefits you might not have thought about. And what we typically see with our customers that do automate processes end to end and use technology such as RPA to achieve that last mile of automation is they're actually able to achieve a 99% reduction in human errors from all of these tasks. And yeah, that's not even talking about the really obvious benefit of being able to take a process that might take weeks for someone to do manually to just, I guess, the amount of time it takes for everything to run. So it can be minutes.
I'm glad that you mentioned that about not getting rid of people. The focus is for them to be able to focus on creative stuff and innovative stuff and stuff that really gets them excited rather than repetitive, mundane tasks. Like no one says ever that they love working on those things. And it's really just getting the machine to do what it does best, right? Like the automations, like really maximizing its power. So it's great that you gave that clarity.
It's unlimited manpower. If you think about all the bottlenecks in your organization that are holding you back, where you've got to hire another person to scale the revenue, if you can apply automation, that revenue is scalable without having to hire new people. So this actually, if you gear it correctly, automation is the tool that will create some breathing room between your revenue and your fixed costs. Because so often companies have fixed costs and then they have variable costs. So the variable costs grow as the revenue grows, right? But what if it wasn't like that? What if you could scale your revenue and you just turn the tap on? Like you just say, oh, we just need to do another 1,000 automations this month without having to hire people to prevent you from growing. So it is really revolutionary. It's not about removing people. It's about scaling the revenue and scaling the work they already do.
What about in customer service, guys? So we've talked about customer acquisition, onboarding. Customer service is a huge cost for businesses, and it's often the one that really irritates the customers. So without removing the people as well, like what we keep banging on about.
From a customer service perspective, it's really just, well, first of all, taking away some of those challenges that service agents typically face. So I think everyone is familiar with calling a call center and having been put on hold or transferred to a different team and then having to state all of your details all over again. Like that is a horrible customer experience. So I just want to touch upon that, but also I guess the way to reduce that is by, it's quite simple. It's really by being able to have all of the data about the customer in the one place. Service agents don't need to go swivel chair between multiple different applications. They have a full view of their customer. They're able to service the agent on the spot. And the way to really achieving that is by being able to connect all of your different systems and applications across all of the different channels that you have and creating that single customer view that we kind of touched upon earlier. This really has the benefit of, well, not only, I guess, reducing the time to service the customer, but increasing the customer satisfaction. Just to add to that a little bit is if a customer service agent doesn't have to put a customer on hold and transfer to a different team, they're able to do much more like value add activities with the customer while they have them. Like having a customer on the phone is a best opportunity you can have to chat to them, like have a conversation with them and increase their loyalty to your organization. It's a prime opportunity to do that. Again, like having all that data available means that you can leverage things like AI to recommend the absolute next best action for the customer. It might not even be upselling them. It might just be purely around being able to increase their loyalty or to you as a customer. But to go back to, I guess, the automation perspective, it flows through to that as well. So say you do have a next best action, you then have to act on that. So you may, you need to click on the button and accept that next best action. If you don't have all of the behind the scenes automated as well, then that's just going to cause those problems that we just talked about. So it's being able to provide that seamless customer service, but then being able to automate everything that falls off the back of that. So being able to go and action that next best action automatically, going and updating any other system. So if a customer wants to change their address, automating that change of address in all the other systems where it needs to be done, which is taking away all of the manual tasks that are around that customer service interaction.
There's so much error that can happen in the service process as well. And you really have to rely on great agents. You know, you're like, this guy's an all-star because he goes above and beyond, which is really just doing his job. Like, he makes sure that that complaint's updated. He's taking great notes. It's like he's communicated to everyone. There's follow-up actions, you know. So if you can automate a lot of that stuff, you're actually automating the experience of having your best agent on the case, you know, and not leaving it up to chance of that agent having a bad day or not really knowing about all the things he needs to do in this job. Automation, it doesn't have to be rocket science. One of our clients that are a massive online retailer, they were losing $3 million per year just because their claims process, they didn't really make the claim back to the supplier. You know, they had suppliers in China and they weren't really like flowing it through. So they're giving the money back to the customer, but they weren't claiming it off the manufacturer. So all they did was set up a self-service portal for the manufacturer and the customer to just tie their claims together. That was a $3 million per year revenue leak out of the business, which is now being closed. And that's a concept of automation. It's just a system talking, you know, it's controlling the process as opposed to the claims team, you know, which manually would have to chase these. And that requires human effort. And again, you have to have your best claims officer on the case to get the right outcome. I think there's some really easy, tangible ways to put automation into service to actually get a financial benefit.
When you say the word easy, for me, I want to be empathetic to companies who want to do all these things that we're talking about, the single customer view. That on its own, it's a big job, right? Integrating all of the data from all of your legacy systems. That's a big job on its own. And like what Katy said, like, in order for you to really maximize that next best action automation, you need to have the infrastructure. You need to have all of that done at the back end. What do you think is holding companies back? We've banged on over and over again about automation, integration, having a single customer view, how it improves customer experience. And we've been in this industry long enough, and we know that there is like a tangible result and that this is the right strategy to go. What do you think is holding companies back? You have to admit, Robin, it's definitely not easy. It's not an easy task to do.
It lacks often sponsorship from the top. You know, like the CEO needs to understand that there needs to be a single customer view and there needs to be integration between systems. And a lot of the time it's acceptable not to have that. And I think there's bigger problems. And usually what's driving the CEO's thinking is revenue and bottom line. It should be a little bit more tech aware and data aware, I think, the average CEO, and then the change will flow. Until then, everyone's just like the manager of IT and the manager of marketing and just going, guys, we need this, and no one else seems to care from above them. So I think directors of businesses in Australia need to be aware of just data security, cloud infrastructure and how that works, and then what the future is going to be like for your company with regard to technology, as opposed to just expecting it to stay the same kind of business forever.
I think it's tying it back to those business outcomes that you'll be able to achieve by having that. So I think often it's not clear on what the business benefit is going to be, how, like, quantifying how much the organization's going to save, what is the impact of increasing that customer lifetime value, what benefit is that going to have to the organization. So look, I think it's very important to have that clear strategy on what it is you're trying to achieve. Having the goals in place along the way. So I think, again, that's why it's really important for customers bring in partners to help create that. Organizations, you can't expect, like, within an individual organization, people to just have the skills to know how to do that. You really need to sort of, I guess, rely on people that do this all day, every day, to be able to guide you through that and know how to build that business case for you and show those quantifiable benefits from having things like a single customer view.
It's an opportunity. It's something we didn't talk about before regarding the recession, but there's a lot of redundancy happening in the labor force, especially in the tech sector. You see 10,000 people lost their job at Facebook. You know, all of these large companies are tightening the belt because we're going into a recession. Everyone sees it coming. So there's a real need for people that maybe had traditional jobs to reskill in the tech space. There's also a real need for organizations to have people internally that are reskilling. So I think the answer for anyone in any industry is to start reskilling into technology if you haven't already.
Every business leader should accept that the world has changed. They can't rely on business status quo anymore, and we all need to level up, right? And the recession is really putting a spotlight on that in terms of how we need to focus on the digitization. How can you increase customer lifetime value with automation?
It's mainly just being able to have access to all of your data, get all of your really important data that you have, get that into the one place so you're able to act on it. You have that visibility of who your customer is. You can act on that data, personalize their experiences, be able to just segment your data and target them effectively in your channels that you have to increase that customer lifetime value.
In terms of reducing the cost, that really applies to the customer lifetime value formula. In terms of increasing recency, frequency, monetary, and tenure, the way I like to think about why you'd want that data centralized in that single view is, imagine if you're a one-man company and you're the one sales guy. I talk to Katy, she's my customer. I need to know, when's the last time she bought? What does she usually buy? How much is it? Is she a frequent buyer or not? I need to know that, so when I talk to her, I don't look like an idiot every time. Imagine if she was my only customer and I go to her, I'm like, Katy, I've got no idea about you. Would you like to buy something? That's the approach that marketers are using now, because they don't have the data to tell them who that customer is and what their preferences are. So it obviously is going to have a massive difference on Katy's experience with me. If I come to her and say, hey, Katy, I see that you buy this specific product from me all the time. We've actually got a new version of it. Would you be interested in that? It's got an improvement on the last version you bought. That's going to obviously get Katy's interest. She's going to be like, yeah, I trust you and you know everything about my needs, so I'm going to give you my money. So think about it like that. Like, a lot of marketers are marketing to the customer with zero idea about who they are, what they buy, what their interests are. It's not empathetic to the customer. It's not empathetic to Katy, who, I've seen this ad. I don't care about your ad for this thing that I don't need. You have to know about your customer if you want to really sell to them in an empathetic way.
There's always revenue and relevance, right? And that's how you enrich your relationship with your customers and make sure that you keep them loyal regardless of the economic condition.